You know what really gets under my skin? Walking down the pasta aisle at the supermarket and watching people grab whatever packet is cheapest without a sideways glance at what is actually in it. Pasta is pasta, right? Flour and water, chuck it in the pot, slap some sauce on, dinner sorted. Except that is not how it works anymore. What they are selling you as pasta in this country is often a far cry from what your nana would have recognized. Some of these brands are pushing products loaded with chemical residues, processed with materials that have no business near your food, and dried at temperatures so extreme they strip out the goodness before the packet hits the shelf. Go ahead and subscribe, I'll tell you everything. Number 1. Barilla. Right, let us start with the big one, Barilla. The blue box, the one that sits on every single shelf in every single supermarket in New Zealand, from your Woolworths in Newmarket to your Pack and Save in Lower Hutt. Barilla is the largest pasta manufacturer on the planet. They produce something in the neighborhood of 1.8 million tons of pasta every single year. That is a staggering number, and when you are moving that volume of product, corners get cut. That is not an opinion. That is the basic economics of industrial food production. Let us start with the wheat. Barilla sources durum wheat from multiple countries, and that includes Canada. Now, here is the problem with Canadian wheat when it comes to pasta. Canadian wheat farmers have long used a practice called pre-harvest desiccation. That is a fancy way of saying they spray their crops with glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, right before harvest. They do this to dry the crop down uniformly, so it is easier to harvest with machinery. Very efficient, very practical, and it leaves residues of a chemical that the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified as probably carcinogenic to humans. That classification was issued back in 2015, and it has not been withdrawn. And it is not just theoretical. A major study by the Italian consumer organization Il Salvagente in 2020 tested 20 brands of spaghetti and found glyphosate in 7 of them, including several widely available in New Zealand. Multiple rounds of testing over multiple years have confirmed that conventional pasta made with imported wheat frequently carries detectable glyphosate residues. Barilla themselves reduced Canadian wheat imports by 35% after Italy introduced an origin labeling law. But that law was quietly reversed in 2021, and since then, imported wheat can be labeled as made in Italy as long as manufacturing happens there. But glyphosate is only part of the story. Barilla uses Teflon dies. A die is the metal plate the dough gets pushed through to form the shape. Traditional pasta makers use bronze dies, which create a rough, porous surface that grabs onto sauce. Teflon dies create a smooth, almost shiny surface that does not hold sauce properly. More importantly, Teflon is polytetrafluoroethylene, which belongs to the PFAS family, the so-called forever chemicals that do not break down in the environment. The industry says Teflon dies do not transfer meaningful PFAS to the pasta, but organizations like Mamavation in the United States have been commissioning independent lab testing specifically for PFAS in pasta products. When you are pushing dough through a PFAS-coated surface under pressure and heat, the idea that absolutely nothing transfers is optimistic at best. Then there is the drying process. Barilla dries their pasta at high temperatures. Industrial pasta makers typically dry their products at temperatures above 75 degrees Celsius, sometimes well over 90 degrees. They do this because it is fast. You can dry a batch of spaghetti in 3 to 6 hours at those temperatures. Compare that to traditional slow drying, which takes anywhere from 12 to 50 hours at temperatures below 40 degrees. High temperature drying does 2 things that should concern you. First, it damages the protein structure in the wheat, creating compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These are substances that form when proteins and sugars react at high heat, and research has linked them to inflammation, oxidative stress, and an increased risk of chronic diseases including diabetes and cardiovascular problems. Second, high temperature drying destroys many of the natural vitamins, minerals, and flavor compounds in the wheat. The result is a bland, nutritionally diminished product that functions as little more than a carbohydrate delivery system. And then, to compensate for the nutrients they have destroyed through their own processing, many versions of Barilla sold in international markets are enriched with synthetic vitamins like niacin, thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, and folic acid, along with iron in the form of ferrous lactate. Laboratory-produced nutrients added to a product that had perfectly good natural nutrients before the manufacturing process destroyed them. It is like demolishing a perfectly good house and building a shed on the same spot. Your body does not process synthetic vitamins the same way it processes naturally occurring ones. The bioavailability is different. And the whole exercise is unnecessary if you just process the pasta properly in the first place. So what you have with Barilla is a product that may contain glyphosate residues, is processed through PFAS-coated dyes, dried at temperatures that create harmful compounds, and then has synthetic vitamins added back as a band-aid. That is not pasta. That is an industrial product wearing pasta's clothes. Number 2. Value. Now we are really getting into the weeds. Value is the ultra-budget range sold at Woolworths, New Zealand. If you have ever seen those stark blue and white packets sitting on the bottom shelf at your local supermarket, that is value. It is the pasta you buy when you are absolutely skint, when the rent is due tomorrow, and you have got $8 to feed the family for 3 days. I understand the economics. I genuinely do. But understanding why people buy it does not change what it actually is. The first problem with value pasta is transparency, or rather, the complete absence of it. Where does the wheat come from? They do not tell you. Is it Australian? Is it Canadian? Is it from some blend of origins that changes every few months depending on whatever is cheapest on the commodity markets? You do not know. They do not disclose it. And when a company will not tell you where their raw materials come from, that is usually because the answer would not look good on the packet. What we do know is that value pasta is manufactured to hit the lowest possible price point. That means the cheapest wheat available on the global market, processed in the fastest and most cost-efficient way possible. We are talking Teflon dyes, high-temperature drying, the whole industrial playbook turned up to 11. There is no bronze dye anywhere near this product. There is no slow drying. There is no careful selection of wheat varieties for protein content or flavor profile. This is pasta made by accountants, not by anyone who has ever cared about what happens when it hits your plate. And the results speak for themselves. Anyone who has cooked value pasta knows that it sticks together no matter what you do. You can stir it every 30 seconds, you can add oil to the water, you can perform a ritual dance around the stovetop, and that linguine is still going to come out of the pot welded together in a solid mass. That stickiness is a direct result of the high-temperature drying process, damaging the gluten network in the pasta. When properly made, pasta hits boiling water, the protein structure holds the starch together and gives you that firm, al dente bite. When the protein has been cooked half to death before the pasta even reaches your kitchen, it releases its starch into the water immediately, and you end up with a gluey, mushy mess. But the texture issue is the least of your worries. When you are buying the cheapest wheat on the global market, you are buying whatever nobody else wanted. That often means wheat from regions with less stringent agricultural chemical regulations. That means wheat that may have been treated with pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides that are restricted or banned in New Zealand, but perfectly legal in the countries where the wheat was grown. Under the Food Standards Australia-New Zealand Code, there are maximum residue levels for many agricultural chemicals in food products, but the testing is not comprehensive. The New Zealand Total Diet Study, which is the major survey of chemical contaminants in our food supply, is only conducted every 5 to 7 years. The most recent completed study was in 2016. That means there are enormous gaps in our knowledge about what is actually in the food on our supermarket shelves. And the cheapest products from the least transparent manufacturers are the ones most likely to fall through those gaps. When a supermarket chain is manufacturing its own ultra-budget products to compete with branded goods, the incentive is to hit a price point. Full stop. Number 3. Diamond. Diamond is a bit of a Kiwi staple, in the same way that a pair of gumboots is a Kiwi staple. Functional, familiar, and nobody is going to mistake it for anything fancy. It has been sitting on shelves for yonks, occupying that middle ground between ultra-budget and premium imported. Not too cheap to feel dodgy, not too expensive to feel extravagant. But Diamond shares many of the same fundamental problems as the budget brands, just wrapped in slightly more respectable packaging. The wheat sourcing is not transparent. You are not told where the durum wheat comes from, what varieties are used, or what agricultural practices were employed. Is the wheat sprayed with glyphosate before harvest? Is it blended from multiple origins to hit a specification at the lowest cost? The packet does not answer these questions. The processing is standard industrial. Teflon dyes, high temperature drying, no bells, no whistles. The pasta is serviceable. The penne is on the thicker side, which some people like. The spaghetti does its job. But you are not getting a product that has been crafted with any particular attention to nutritional integrity or flavor development. You are getting a product that has been engineered to be consistent, shelf-stable, and cheap to produce. And here is the rub. Under the FSAN's labeling framework, there is no requirement for pasta manufacturers to declare the country of origin of their wheat. The Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Agreement means food legally sold in Australia can also be sold here, even if it exceeds our local residue limits. Diamond is not a terrible pasta, but it is a pasta that asks you to trust a system that does not trust you back with information. Number 4. Maggi. Now, technically, Maggi is known primarily for instant noodles rather than traditional dried pasta, but their products sit in the same aisle, they are marketed as a meal solution, and millions of New Zealanders reach for them every single week. Maggi is a Nestlé brand, and Nestlé is the largest food company on earth. That alone should give you pause, because when you are the biggest food company in the world, your primary obligation is to your shareholders, not to the person eating your product. Let us talk about what happened in India. In 2015, food inspectors in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh tested samples of Maggi 2-minute noodles and found lead levels of 17.2 parts per million. The permissible limit was 2.5 parts per million. That is nearly 7 times over the legal limit. The Food Safety and Standards Authority of India subsequently tested further samples, and the results were damning. On the 5th of June 2015, the FOSE ordered a nationwide recall of all 9 Maggi variants, declaring them, and I am quoting the regulatory finding here, unsafe and hazardous for human consumption. 400 million packets of Maggi noodles were destroyed. The company faced direct losses of at least $277 million in missed sales, with another $70 million spent executing the recall. Nestlé contested the findings, arguing the labs were not properly accredited. The Bombay High Court eventually struck down the ban on procedural grounds, but that is the key detail people miss. The ban was lifted because of procedure, not because the product was proven safe. Separate testing by Delhi authorities found 10 out of 13 samples exceeded permissible lead limits. Testing in other states produced similar results. Yes, subsequent testing in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia found Maggi noodles within safe limits. But if a product passes in one country and fails spectacularly in another, that tells you something about variability in manufacturing or raw materials. Then there is the MSG issue. The packet said no added MSG, but testing found monosodium glutamate present. Nestlé explained that glutamate occurs naturally in components like hydrolyzed groundnut protein, onion powder, and wheat flour. Technically accurate. Also spectacularly misleading. Nestlé eventually agreed to remove the claim from the packaging. Beyond the lead and MSG controversies, Maggi products are fundamentally ultra-processed foods. Many of them contain palm oil, which raises environmental and health concerns. Some formulations include tertiary butyl hydroquinone, which is a synthetic preservative that has been the subject of ongoing debate among food safety researchers. The sodium content is astronomical. A single serving of some Maggi noodle products contains more than half the recommended daily intake of sodium for an adult. Excessive sodium intake is directly linked to high blood pressure, stroke, and cardiovascular disease, which are among the leading causes of death in New Zealand. Look, I am not saying that every packet of Maggi on your local supermarket shelf is going to poison you. But when a company's product has been declared unsafe and hazardous by a national food safety authority, when 400 million packets had to be pulled from shelves and burned, and when the product is an ultra-processed cocktail of refined carbohydrates, industrial fats, and chemical additives, maybe it is time to leave it on the shelf. Number 5. Countdown Own Brand, or Woolworths Own Brand, depending on when you last walked through the door. Subscribe to show that these videos do help and do make sense. Right, so this one is going to be close to a few hearts because Woolworths Own Brand pasta, the stuff that used to be called Countdown Brand before the rebrand, has pulled a lot of Kiwis through university. It is cheap, it is everywhere, and it does the job in the same way that a hammer does the job if what you need is actually a screwdriver. Yes, you can bash the screw in with a hammer. No, it is not the right tool for the job. The spaghetti costs about $1.50 to $2 for 500 grams. At that price, you are getting industrial pasta manufactured to hit a cost specification, nothing more. The wheat sourcing is opaque. Woolworths New Zealand is owned by the Australian Woolworths Group. The own brand products are manufactured by third-party suppliers, chosen on the basis of price, using wheat sourced from wherever it is cheapest on the global market. Could be Australia, Canada, the United States, Turkey. You do not know, and the FSAN's labeling framework does not require them to tell you. One thing that has been noted by multiple independent reviewers is that Woolworths' own brand pasta tends to be chewy rather than al dente. That is an important distinction. Al dente means the pasta is cooked through but still has a firm bite at the center. That firmness comes from properly structured gluten that has been preserved through careful processing. Chewy means the pasta is tough and rubbery, which happens when the protein structure has been damaged by high temperature drying and then overcooked to try to compensate. It is the difference between a steak that is perfectly medium rare and a steak that has been cooked until it could sole your shoe. New Zealand has one of the most concentrated supermarket markets in the developed world. Two companies control more than 80% of the grocery market. When these companies manufacture their own branded products, they compete directly with independent brands on their own shelves, controlling placement, pricing, and promotions. It is a system that rewards the cheapest possible production, not the best. When you buy own brand pasta, you are buying a product that exists not because someone wanted to make great pasta, but because a supermarket chain wanted to maximize margin in the dried goods aisle. Number 6. Divella. Divella is an Italian brand that you will find on shelves in New Zealand, typically in the mid-price range, alongside brands like Barilla and Remo. It markets itself with the prestige of being Italian-made, and for a lot of consumers, that Italian origin is enough to assume quality. Made in Italy must be good, right? Well, not so fast. In the Il Salvagente study I mentioned earlier, the major investigation that tested 20 brands of spaghetti for glyphosate, Divella was one of the 7 brands that came back positive. The study found traces of glyphosate in Divella's product, and the likely explanation is the same one that applies to many Italian pasta makers. Despite being manufactured in Italy, a significant portion of the wheat used by many Italian pasta companies is imported. Italy is the world's largest consumer of pasta and the second largest producer, but it does not grow enough durum wheat domestically to meet its own demand. Italian pasta makers import vast quantities of wheat from Canada, the United States, Australia, Kazakhstan, and other producing regions. And as we have already discussed, Canadian wheat in particular is frequently treated with glyphosate as a pre-harvest desiccant. The cruel irony is that the Made in Italy label creates a halo effect. Consumers assume Italian pasta means Italian wheat, processed according to centuries-old traditions under the watchful eye of a mustached nonno. The reality is that many Italian manufacturers are industrial operations using imported wheat, Teflon dyes, and high-temperature drying. The word Italian on the packet refers to where the factory is, not where the wheat was grown. Divella uses standard industrial methods. No mention of bronze dyes. No claim of slow drying. Since Italy's origin labeling law was repealed in 2021, they do not have to disclose the wheat's origin. What you get is a product trading on national identity while offering essentially the same industrially processed pasta as any budget brand, just with a prettier packet. And under the current FSANZ framework, manufacturers are not required to disclose whether wheat was treated with glyphosate, whether pasta was processed through bronze or Teflon dyes, or the temperature at which it was dried. All of these factors affect nutritional quality and safety, and none appear on the label. Right, now, we have been through the rough stuff, and I know it is not pleasant, but the good news is that there are options. Not everything in the pasta aisle is a chemical minefield. There are brands that actually care about what they are making, that use traditional methods, that source their wheat responsibly, and that produce a product you can eat without needing a chemistry degree to understand the implications. So let us talk about the 3 pasta brands that are actually worth your money. Number 7. Cecco. If there is one brand of pasta that I would recommend to every single person watching this, it is Cecco. This is a company that has been making pasta since 1886 in the mountain town of Fara San Martino in Abruzzo, Italy. That is nearly 140 years of continuous production, and they have not compromised on their methods. Let us start with the dyes. Cecco uses bronze dyes. Every single shape in their range is extruded through traditional bronze plates. The result is a rough, porous surface on the pasta that grabs onto sauce like nothing else. If you run your finger over a piece of uncooked Cecco penne and compare it to a piece of Barilla penne, you can feel the difference immediately. The Cecco is textured, almost gritty. The Barilla is smooth, almost plastic. That texture is not cosmetic. It is functional. It means your bolognese, your pesto, your carbonara actually clings to the pasta instead of sliding off onto the plate. Now, the drying. This is where Cecco really separates itself from the pack. Cecco slow dries their pasta at low temperatures. Depending on the shape, the drying process takes anywhere from 12 to 50 hours. Compare that to 3 to 6 hours for industrial brands. This slow, gentle process preserves the natural color, flavor, and aroma of the durum wheat semolina. It keeps the protein structure intact, which means the pasta cooks evenly and holds its shape beautifully, giving you that perfect al dente bite that Italians consider non-negotiable. Critically, slow drying avoids the formation of advanced glycation end products. Those harmful compounds that form when proteins and sugars react at high temperatures simply do not develop when you dry pasta the way Cecco does it. The wheat selection is rigorous. Cecco sources durum wheat from Italy plus California and Arizona, because the characteristics they need cannot be found in a single variety. Italian wheat provides flavor. American desert wheat provides the protein for structure and firmness. Their parameters are stricter than what the law requires, tested at origin, upon arrival, and during processing. They doubled their Italian supply chain between 2016 and 2020, working with over 1,600 farmers across 10 regions, and Cecco mills their own wheat in their own mill, right next to the factory. They use cold spring water from the Magella Mountains, below 15 degrees Celsius, to knead the dough. Every step protects the raw material rather than sacrificing it for speed. Cecco is more expensive than the budget options. You are looking at around $5 to $7 for 500 grams in most New Zealand supermarkets. But when you consider what you are actually getting, a pasta that holds sauce, cooks perfectly, has genuine flavor, retains its nutritional profile, and does not contain the harmful byproducts of industrial processing, that extra few dollars starts to look like one of the best investments you can make at the supermarket. Number 8. San Remo. San Remo is a name that will be familiar to a lot of Kiwis, and there is a good reason for that. This is an Australian family-owned company that has been making pasta since 1936. Their factory is in Windsor Gardens, South Australia, and the vast majority of their standard pasta range is made right there using 100% Australian-grown durum wheat. Now, let us talk about why that matters. Australia, and specifically South Australia, has developed an outstanding durum wheat growing region. San Remo has been working with local researchers and farmers since the late 1980s to develop durum wheat varieties specifically suited to South Australian conditions. That is nearly 4 decades of collaborative breeding and improvement, resulting in wheat that is high in protein, excellent in flavor, and grown under Australian agricultural regulations. Australia does not permit the use of genetically modified wheat. Australian wheat is subject to the regulatory oversight of Food Standards Australia New Zealand, the same body that governs food safety across the Tasman. And San Remo's wheat is grown domestically, which means it is not subject to the pre-harvest desiccation practices that are common in Canada. San Remo's products are clearly labeled as non-GMO. They contain no artificial colors, no artificial flavors, no artificial preservatives, no added MSG, and no additives. The ingredient list on a packet of San Remo spaghetti reads durum wheat semolina. Full stop. That is it. One ingredient. That is what pasta is supposed to be. San Remo also offers an organic range that is certified organic, made from organically certified 100% durum wheat semolina. Organic certification means the wheat was grown without synthetic pesticides, without synthetic herbicides including glyphosate, and without synthetic fertilizers. If you want the cleanest possible pasta at a reasonable price, San Remo's organic range is very hard to beat. The pricing is competitive. Standard San Remo pasta typically runs about $2.50 to $3.50 for 500 grams, which puts it in the same ballpark as Barilla, but with significantly better transparency about sourcing and ingredients. The organic range is a few dollars more, but still well below the premium Italian imports. San Remo also earns points for environmental responsibility. They have removed the plastic inner bag from their gluten-free packaging to reduce waste, and their standard packaging is recyclable. These are small things, but they reflect a company culture that actually considers the downstream impact of their decisions. Is San Remo as refined as a traditional Italian bronze dye pasta? To be honest, no. They use standard modern processing methods, and the texture is not going to be identical to what you get from Cecco or a traditional Gragnano pasta. But what San Remo offers is something that is increasingly rare in the food industry. Honest pasta. You know where the wheat comes from, you know what is in the packet, you know what is not in the packet, and in a market where opacity is the norm and the cheapest possible production is the goal, that transparency is worth more than you might think. Number 9. Garofalo. If you want the best dried pasta available on a New Zealand supermarket shelf, Garofalo is where you should be looking. When I first cooked it and tasted it plain, dressed with a little olive oil, I realized that everything I had been eating before was a pale imitation. That is not an exaggeration. Garofalo is produced in Gragnano, a small town near Naples that has been the spiritual home of Italian pasta making for centuries. Gragnano holds IGP status, which is a protected geographical indication from the European Union. This is the same type of certification that protects Champagne, Parmigiano Reggiano, and Prosciutto di Parma. It means that pasta produced in Gragnano must meet specific standards of production, using traditional methods, local water sources, and established quality benchmarks. You cannot slap a Gragnano label on pasta made in a factory in Shanghai. The name means something. Garofalo uses bronze dies. Every shape is extruded through traditional bronze draw plates, giving the pasta that characteristic rough, porous surface that is essential for holding sauce. The drying is done slowly, at low temperatures, allowing the flavor and nutritional profile of the wheat to develop naturally, without the thermal damage caused by industrial high-temperature drying. The result is a pasta with an unmistakable deep yellow color, a firm and satisfying bite, and a genuine wheat flavor that you can actually taste. The protein content of Garofalo pasta is notably higher than most budget brands. Protein is what gives pasta its structure, its ability to hold an al dente texture, and its satiety factor. Higher protein means you feel fuller for longer, which ironically means you might actually eat less pasta per serving, which partly offsets the higher price. A packet of Garofalo typically costs around $7 to $8 for 500 grams in New Zealand. That is roughly double what you would pay for a budget brand. But you are getting a fundamentally superior product. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I should note that Garofalo was one of the brands that showed trace levels of glyphosate in the Il Salvagente study from 2020. The levels detected were very low, and this likely reflects the use of some imported wheat in the blend, which is common even among premium Italian pasta makers. No Italian manufacturer uses 100% domestically grown wheat, because Italy simply does not produce enough durum wheat to meet demand. But what sets Garofalo apart from the industrial brands is everything else. The bronze dyes, the slow drying, the IGP certification, the attention to protein content and flavor development, the commitment to a traditional production method that prioritizes quality over volume. A trace of glyphosate in a product that gets everything else right is a very different proposition from a product that gets nothing right and also has glyphosate. If your budget allows, Garofalo is the best pasta you can buy in a New Zealand supermarket. It is the kind of product that makes you understand why Italians get so passionate about pasta. Because when it is done properly, when the wheat is good and the processing is careful and the drying is slow and the dyes are bronze, pasta is not just a vehicle for sauce. It is a food in its own right, with its own flavor and its own beauty. All of these issues, glyphosate, Teflon dyes, high temperature drying, chemical residues, misleading labels, they come down to one question. Do you know what you are eating? Right now in New Zealand, the system is designed so that you do not. The labeling laws do not require the information you need. The testing is underfunded and infrequent. The duopoly incentivizes the cheapest production. But you have a choice. Every time you stand in that pasta aisle, you can grab the cheapest packet and hope for the best. Or you can spend a few extra dollars on a product from a company willing to tell you what is in it. That is not a luxury. It is an investment in your health and in a food system that rewards quality over volume. Next time someone tells you all pasta is the same, you tell them to come talk to me. I am a grandpa, and grandpas worry. Look after yourself.